make sure to give my dad a 5-star review.
Make sure to like and subscribe to his YouTube. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
American Christianity can bring you power. It can bring you wealth. It can bring you this certain amount of, you can do whatever you want. We can have whatever we want now. And that's not the faith that I see in Scripture. That's not it. And so I think for me, I want to separate the BS and I want to go back to this, what I see in Scripture, this Jesus, that's not what I see out here. And that's not what I see in purity culture.
Well, hi there, Faithful Politics listeners and viewers. If you're joining us on our YouTube channel, guys, thanks so much for coming out for another great episode of the Faithful Politics podcast. My name is Josh Bertram. I am your faithful host. And of course, we have our political host, Will. It's good to see you, Will. I gave you the prompt, Will.
Rare moment of kindness, Josh. Good to see you too.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, we're just so happy to be able to do this, bring you great content. So please like, subscribe, do the things that hack the algorithm because we want to get this great content out to more people and you let us do that. And today we're super excited to have Erin Hicks Moon on the show with us today. She is a writer, podcaster, and storyteller who serves as the resident Bible scholar on the Faith and co-host of the Faith Adjacent podcast and works as senior creative at the Popcast. Is that the Popcast or podcast?
Popcast. You got it.
I was like, wait, am I reading this correctly? Sorry. At the Popcast Media Group, she authors the popular Substack newsletter, The Swipe Up, and her forthcoming book, I've Got Questions, I guess it's out now.
Yes.
I've Got Questions, the spiritual practice of having it out with God through Baker. And she invites readers to wrestle honestly with faith and doubt. She's a Texan, now living in Birmingham, Alabama with her husband and 3 children. And she's known for helping people disentangle faith in a kind, curious community that welcomes honest questions. Erin, thank you so much for coming on the program.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you. And so, of course, there's a story behind the book. And we always ask our guests to talk about that, but I am particularly curious about this. I've Got Questions, this spiritual practice of having it out with God. I love the title. I love the subtitle.
Thank you.
How did you guys, how did this book come about, essentially? What's your story that brought this to fruition?
Yeah. So, I think like a lot of people my age, I'm 42. I think we, millennials specifically, we have gone through a lot of change. We have seen, particularly here in America, we have seen the ways that American Christianity has been maybe commodified, maybe weaponized in the public sphere. And unfortunately, we also went to VBS and we saw the felt board Jesus, and we had the goldfish
Indeed.
crackers, and we believed, we bought in to the whole thing, and we thought the people teaching us bought in to the whole thing, and turns out. Some of them may have been excited about the power that American Christianity offered, as opposed to the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount and that type of a thing. And I think that was a very jarring experience, particularly maybe the 2016 election was perhaps a moment for some of us, and other world events, I think, were this kind of cross-section of power and American Christianity were really difficult moments, I think, for a lot of us. And maybe that happened on a global scale, maybe that happened on a personal scale, but I think a lot of people my age, people around my age were really dealing with this, hey, what do I believe? And do I believe the things that I grew up believing? What should go? What should stay? And I started having these conversations with people through my podcast, through my newsletter, in my offline life. And people were really, really struggling with I don't fully know what I've got here as when I look at my faith, when I look at what I believe, like my church life, my faith life, God, that kind of a thing. And so I wanted to, I was also going through that, and I was maybe just a little bit ahead of other people. And there were some people who were also ahead of me that I was, kind of looking at as well. And so just kind of leaving some lanterns on the pathway is kind of how I see this book a little bit. And so that is the process of that. I went through a couple of kind of processes, a sort of a framework in a way to say, hey, let's pick up some pieces of our faith. Let's examine them. Let's see if what's good, what needs to stay, what needs to go. Richard Rohr talks about the 3 boxes of order, disorder, and reorder. And that is essentially kind of what I think a lot of us are going through as we look at our faith and as we try to decide what's good and what's bad and what needs to stay and what needs to go.
Is what you described categorized as deconstruction? Because I'm really fascinated by deconstructionists and those that are going through deconstruction, because I came to the faith much later in life, 2008. I never went to VBS. Never did all those fun things.
Well, I don't know that you're missing a ton. Maybe you got out of some religious trauma. So
while we were in VBS, what he's saying, Erin, is that while we were in VBS, he was high on drugs.
Okay,
somewhere,
a different kind of trauma.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes before I came to the faith, and came to the faith really with somewhat open arms, thinking, hey, this is going to be better for me. My wife, on the other hand, as a pastor's kid, and has a much different experience with the church than I ever did. I mean, I always joke with her, like, I don't know why she even married me, because I wasn't necessarily a Christian when we met. Maybe she was being rebellious, but so, like, I don't understand, like, the things that people are deconstructing, but it sounds like what you were talking about kind of fits in that realm. Could you maybe just unpack, like, what it means to deconstruct for folks like myself that don't really understand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the concept of deconstruction and reconstruction I think it tends to be a very white construct. I think it tends to be a very American construct.
Agreed.
I think it tends to be a very evangelical construct. And it is the idea of, we were handed a faith that was deeply entrenched in things like purity culture, in complementarian, deeply complementarian theology, these kind of ideas that were kind of given from one's very specific perspective, that is not necessarily off base or not scriptural, but one really, really heavy, deeply entrenched perspective. And without knowing that there is a full spectrum of theological beliefs across the board, that, you can find a lot of different perspectives in scripture of different ways to love. There are a million ways to love God, right? And so I think a lot of times deconstruction is just a little bit of this. And I think a lot of generations have done this. I just don't think they gave it a label. Millennials, we love a label. We love to put something in a file folder and be like, okay, I'm doing my thing now. This is my era. And, we love that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, I was talking to my dad about this, and he was just like, we just didn't do this. Like, this is not, and I'm like, no, you did. You at some point took the faith that my grandfather gave you, because you grew up in church, you grew up in Sunday school. And at some point you decided whether or not that was something you wanted to keep. Is this something that you decided that this was what you wanted in your adult life, as opposed to keeping the faith of your childhood? You decided, okay, do I believe the things that were handed down to me? And I think that's all deconstruction is kind of like, okay, I was so entrenched in this as a child. have I even bothered to kind of examine and prosecute the things I believe as an adult? It's taking that Adam and Eve narrative. Okay, here's the story I was told as a child. Here's the Noah's Ark story I was told as a child. Okay, now let's look at this through an adult lens. Okay, what do I actually believe about this? The Bible was given to me as an instruction manual as a child. Looking at it as an instruction manual as an adult is a wild concept, because you can clearly see that it's not an instruction manual.
Agreed.
Or it is an instruction manual on how to not human. Like that would be a wild thing to be like, no, this teaches me how to be a person. No, it doesn't. That teaches you how to murder people. That's a crazy thing. Like, no. And so I think it's just this process of like growing up in your faith a little bit and saying, okay, I don't know that the things that I was taught, maybe they were simplified. And I don't necessarily also think that that was like an ill-intended thing. Sometimes it was, but not all the time. Sometimes you grew up in a high control religion and that was the intention. It was the intention to control you and to manipulate you into conformity or whatever. But a lot of times it was just like, my parents, they don't know what to tell me about sex. And so we're going to go with true love waits. And now we know, because we've been to therapy now and we've had, some of us have been married for 20 years and we're like, well, now we know that wasn't the best thing for us. Maybe that did not work out as well as we wanted it to, but now we know. And so it's just that unpacking. I see it as that unpacking of, let me examine this. Let me pay attention to this. Let me be intentional about this. And then I'm going to unpack all of these boxes. I'm going to lay all of this out, what stays, what goes, and now I'm going to pack it back up. It's that order, disorder, reorder. I keep going. I mean, Richard Rohr said it so much better, really, than any of us ever could. So
Richard Rohr is the GOAT.
He's pretty great. He's pretty great.
I love that that definition, because I think that whenever people hear the term deconstructing, they think, okay, well, it's deconstructing means tearing down, right? Because if you're not constructing, you're demolishing. But like, based on my understanding of deconstructing, like it's almost it almost would be better named like re-evaluating.
Oh yeah.
Than deconstructing. And I especially like what you said, how this is just the same thing but the different name. Because as you were talking, I was like, blacks and slaves used the Bible to help their cause to end segregation, and slavery, like, which means at some point in time, somebody looked at the Bible and said, what I'm reading here does not comport with what I'm seeing in the environment. And then, and you see sort of these instances throughout time where similar groups are doing that, whether it's Martin Luther King or whether, it's like a lot of the LGBTQ folks that we actually have on our show will say, hey, like, I know there's a lot of thoughts about LGBTQ inclusions in the church, but the text that I'm reading and the way I'm interpreting it, says something different than what the public is saying, So like, I do think that deconstructing, isn't bad.
No,
it's actually probably necessary.
Well,
for the church to grow.
And if you look through the history of Christianity, you see this pattern throughout it. I mean, you can go back to, take something like the Reformation. That is a deconstruction of what Christianity had been. Okay, we're going to take some of these like indulgences. That's not scriptural. All right, let's unpack some of that. Let's unpack some of what we're doing. If you go the Counter-Reformation, if you go the Great Schism, you go back even people get frustrated with me when I say this, but I think Jesus was technically a deconstructor. We're taking at that point it was, hey, the Messiah is going to be he's going to release us from Roman rule. We are going to be free from Roman rule. That is the freedom that Messiah is going to offer. And Jesus comes in and it's like, hey, actually, love that you interpreted it that way, but actually I'm doing something completely different. I'm about your heart. I'm about your soul. I'm about your spirit. And I'm doing something completely different than that. And so I think that it is it's in our DNA as a religion. It's in our DNA spiritually. It's something that everyone has been doing corporately and individually.
I think that's such an insightful point, because when I've looked into church history, and I'm no expert, but I do enough reading to have a pretty decent understanding of it, at least the major movements, right? And I look at church history and I think, yeah, and I've heard this said, Christianity has this built-in Reformation kind of DNA, like you're saying. Like it's constantly reevaluating itself and constantly, and I think part of that is how Jesus came in and did it.
Yeah.
He set this model of coming into a system that was supposed to please God, had turned into oppressive in its institutions and in its rulings and the way that it treated people, especially those on the margins, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so what happens? Jesus comes in and he is deconstructing, dude. He's literally saying, we're going to tear down this temple.
We're tearing down this temple. That's a deconstruction.
Dude, and that got them so angry that they killed him, right? I mean, they were so mad about it. And what I love, even thinking about like us, like the Christian history, but even thinking about that as a macrocosm to our microcosm of ourselves, there's a process to this. And I love how your book moves through that. You have the first movement, origins. I'm just putting a movement. Second movement, lament. Third, asking questions. Fourth, the pressure points. Fifth, pushing boundaries. Sixth, making peace. Seventh, rebuilding and rewilding. And what I love about it, well, I like the language. I think it's really, it's catchy, it's compelling, it creates interest. But I also love the idea of process. And how did you come up with that? And talk a little bit about that process as we're moving through these, from where you were to the place where you are now. What was that process like?
Well, I think for me, it was just sort of the process that I identified as I went through it myself. I love a step-by-step guide. I love a checklist. I'm a checklist culture girly. That was a big part of like growing up evangelical. It was do your 30-minute quiet time, do your ABC prayer, have you shared the gospel with somebody this week, that type of a thing. And it was like, check, 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 going to heaven. Everything's great. So there was that tendency for me to be like, to just kind of transpose that over to a more, to deconstruction and reconstruction. And so I knew that was the temptation, but I didn't want to do that. But I knew that there was a framework that, as we ask questions, as we walk through this, I did want some sort of I knew that there was a process. There's a grief process. There were things that I knew I needed to do. And I am not good with feelings. I'm actually enormously, historically, famously bad at feelings. You can ask anyone that knows me personally. And so I knew that I would need some sort of like a tripwire to be like, okay, you have reached this point in the process. Now you need to focus on being sad now, because you are sad because, the first thing is like lamenting the things that you have lost in this, maybe your church has hurt you. Maybe you have experienced some sort of loss in faith or spirituality, or the thing that you thought was going to happen, in your spirituality did not happen. And mourning that loss. And I would much rather just forget about that portion of this. I don't like to be sad. I'm very bad at the sads. And, but I think, kind of walking through that process, and I really did try to skip over to the next thing and just be like, we don't have to worry about that. But when I started the next part of the process without grieving and without like honoring that part of me that was very sad. I was like, I actually cannot move on. I actually am getting tripped up here because I have not grieved this huge part of my life that I am heartbroken about, that I have watched like my faith be just bastardized on an international platform. I'm watching the words of Jesus be twisted. These words that have meant so much, like genuinely so much to me, I believe them. I believe that they are the words of life, and they are being twisted and weaponized by people in power to make oppressed people more oppressed. And it is shocking, and it is awful. It's gut-wrenching. And if I don't grieve that, if I don't mourn that, I cannot move on. I'm going to continue to descend into resentfulness and bitterness and anger. And that's okay. Like I can be mad, but I also need to pay attention to what's underneath my anger, which is really just grief. And so I knew that there was going to have to be a process that, and so it was just really just kind of me, like running into a lot of walls over and over again, and figuring out like how I could move forward. And I think, and what's interesting about the process is I'm not just going through it once and we're done. It's like I have to keep going through it because it's always like, okay, something else has come up. Now I'm hurting again. I'm in lament again. And now but now or I need to go back to a space and I need to push another boundary because I'm still uncertain about something here. And I just think that's our life in the Spirit. I think that's just life with Holy Spirit and life in community with people. We're always brushing up against people. We're always, learning more about God, and we're always experiencing God and being in community with God and other people. And I think that's just our life. And that's the work of our life, is to continue to get close to God and be in communion with God. And so we're always kind of walking through that experience, I think.
I'm really interested in like the spiritual surgical precision it takes for a deconstructionist to like say all this other stuff is bad, but like my faith in Jesus is still true. And I'm super like curious because I spoke with she's a content creator, April LaJoy.
I love April. I think she's fabulous.
And so we were talking about like this deconstruction, and then she had mentioned, that she's still a believer, and I'm fascinated by this because if a pastor preacher, the same pastor preacher that's telling you about purity culture is also telling you about the goodness of Jesus. Like, so how do we pick out this part we don't like and then stick with this part? I'm really curious on how you do that.
Well, I think that happens for some people, and I think for some people it is the thing that kills it for them. And I think both of those responses are valid. I know lots of people who, like, I was at my at one of my book events, a gentleman stood up and he was like, "Hey, love the book. It's great. I had to leave the faith. Like, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot be a part of whatever," and he used an expletive that I won't use here, but he's like, "I cannot be a part of,
you can if you want, by the way."
That's fine.
We have certain shows that are explicit. I'm just saying, if you want to drop the F-bomb, it's okay.
Great. But he was like, I cannot be a part of what this group is perpetuating. And I don't want that label associated with me. And I think that's a completely valid thing to say. But for me, and I don't judge that. And I also don't know that is a forever thing for him or anyone else. Just like I don't know it's a forever, like I assume that I will be a believer for all of my life, but who knows? I hope so. But who knows what'll happen? Who knows how I'll change? But I also don't know that that's a fixed point for that guy either. And what I want more than anything is I want to be open to movements of the Spirit. But I think what's hard is that for me, I don't want to let somebody walk out the door with Jesus's name in their mouth in a way that is a weaponization. I can't, it makes me ill. It makes me, it drives me insane. I don't want it. It is wrong to me. It feels evil to me. It feels, like I'm like my heart rate is going up right now just thinking about it. And I want to not save it, but be a counterweight to what is on offer right now, which is American Christianity can bring you power. It can bring you wealth. It can bring you this certain amount of you can do whatever you want. We can have whatever we want now. And that's not the faith that I see in Scripture. That's not it. And so I think for me, I want to separate the BS. And I want to go back to this, what I see in Scripture, this Jesus, that's not what I see out here. And that's not what I see in purity culture. That's not what I see in A, B, C, and D. And so I want to be able, because this is the thing that I actually do believe in. This is like the words of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, the fruits of the Spirit, all of this is good. This is the words of life. Like I always go back to that story about Peter, when Jesus, and all the disciples he's like, hey, are you, all the disciples leave. And Jesus asked Peter, he's like, are you going to leave too? And Peter's like, hey, where else am I going to go? Because I genuinely do think that you have the words of life. Subtext, I do think you might be crazy, but I do think that this you are the guy. So no, I'm not leaving. Do I feel great about staying? I don't know, but I'm not leaving. And so that to me has always kind of been my deal. It's like, no, I'm here because I do believe that this is where the words of life are. Do I like what everyone else is doing? Not always. I would love to have a family meeting with some of you. Maybe you want to have a family meeting with me, but that to me is, there is something very different. There are two Christianities in this country. And
yes.
I really, and there's probably more, but there are definitely two. And I really, really, really want to salvage the one that I see in Scripture.
I really love that. I want to focus in a little bit on the lament piece because I think it's so powerful, and I think it's a lot of times misunderstood about what we mean by that. And I just love the name of the chapter, White Lion, Hot Dog, Jonathan, Jesus. I think that's I just, again, if someone read that, okay, what are we doing here? But you talk about biblical lament, right? And then you talk about bringing in Jewish mourning rhythms and looking at Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount, that blessed are those who mourn. And even as this is a template, not just for personal, but even congregational lament, can you dig into that a little bit for us? What did you find as you were researching? How did this work out in your own life? And this is, I know it's several questions here, but really it's about what was this grief and lament? Why is it so important?
Yeah, I think, every other culture has a robust grieving rhythm and ritual. We do not. And we did as Americans. We did, mainly because we brought a lot over from our home countries when we immigrated. Native Americans, they had indigenous people here had a robust culture. Obviously, we have destroyed that, but we have really sanitized our grieving process here. It is almost non-existent. And anytime that we experience loss, we have so removed ourselves from that loss that we kind of copy paste that into any time we experience any kind of loss, whether it's a loved one dying or getting, kind of having to remove ourselves from a community, a faith community, anything like that. So we don't know how to grieve. I certainly don't know how to grieve. I find myself that, that moment in Talladega Nights when Will Ferrell is like, I don't know what to do with my hands. That's how I feel every time I'm being asked to be sad about something. So it was going into Amanda Held Opel. She wrote a fabulous book about the rhythms of grief. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head, but grief and like rhythms of grieving in other cultures. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. But one of the rhythms that I have always really been interested in is the Jewish practice of sitting Shiva, and it has such beautiful symbolism within it, and it has taught me so much about how you can, especially within community, because I think we have also individualized our grief so much. We have kept it to ourselves because we love to, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and do it on our own, and to our detriment. And so that there's this communal aspect of it, that it is a process. You are not asked to just jump right back into your job a week later after, someone has passed away. There is a slow process, and you are not asked to fake it. You are not asked to spiritually bypass your grief. You are not asked to, say stupid platitudes about, God, it's all in God's plan, or God gained another angel. Nobody says that BS in Shiva. It's not allowed. Like, you can barely, no one even gets to talk. So it's just like, everybody shut up, stop saying stupid things. There's so much in it that I think we can learn from, because we have so sanitized ourselves from the actual process of grief. And it is rich, and it is robust, is beautiful. It's really lovely.
We've spoken to a lot of authors on the show, and I've learned a couple things. One, that authors don't always get to choose the title of their books. Mm-hmm. Most books get released on a Tuesday.
Yes.
Weird. Because our episodes post on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so that's the only reason I know that. And the third thing is that there's always more that authors wanted to put in their book than the editors allowed. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious on what stuff didn't make the cut when you were putting the book together.
Well, I had an excellent editor, Stephanie Smith, who I would give my firstborn to if she wanted a 15-year-old. She doesn't. So she did such a great job, and everything that was supposed to be there is there, and everything that definitely didn't need to be in there is definitely not. But I did write a really terrible chapter about that really went hard in the paint about the farmer and the cowman should be friends, a song from Oklahoma the Musical. I went really hard in the paint for that. And she was like, hey, love this. We do not need 7,000 words about this, and you can take this out. And so I did leave that out. And then I think what's hard about this is that so many stories, they're mine, but they're also someone else's. And you don't want to blow up somebody's spot. You don't want to be a jerk, because maybe you were hurt, and maybe that person didn't intentionally hurt you, but that is a part of your story. So you do have to kind of be careful about that. You do have to, and also I wanted to be very careful because so much of my religious trauma, I had a wonderful childhood. I had an excellent, my parents are amazing, and I had a lovely home church. I still talk with my childhood pastor, and he is an amazing person. That is something that I do not take for granted. I still had, childhood religious trauma, but I never wanted my parents or anyone that I grew up with to feel like I was blaming them or that was an indictment against them. So that was a really hard, line to, line to walk. But my parents said that we did it. So. we did an okay job. But I think those kinds of things are tough, and you have to really be careful when you're writing kind of memoir style stuff, especially when everyone is still alive. You got to be really careful with that. Yeah.
I can imagine the difficulty of that, and just being, I haven't written a book yet. I keep telling Will we should write a book.
Oh, yeah.
But then I'm always just saying it because, I mean, he writes Substacks all the time. So he would be writing it, and I would be like, oh, I need to get my chapter. And he would be like, dude, when's your chapter going to be in? So we will get that figured out, because I just have ADHD all over the place. But I love the idea that you bring out about asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think questions are very, very important. I think questions get us to, like, they get our brain moving in directions, like, you know, when you, that we wouldn't normally go, maybe. And,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny because you ask a question, your brain can't help but start to process the answer and try to figure that out. And so, I mean, we're kind of built that way, right? But also, questions have a cost, you know? And I've thought about in my own life, you know, I've had to make some difficult decisions. One of them was I resigned from, or essentially left a denomination that I had been in my whole life. And some of the support structures there, especially at a time when we were planting a church. And I think about that, and the questions that I had about, is this true? Is that real? Should I be there? About certain theological positions and all that, they had a cost. They had a real cost later on, right? They start here, but the cognitive dissonance that it creates, I think part of it is the anticipation of the cost.
Yeah.
And you invite people to be curious, but curiosity has a price. And I would just love, what was the cost for you? And you can even just reflect on the cost in general if you want, but what do you think about that concept, really, that our questions can have a cost?
I think that is why a lot of people don't want to ask the questions. And I would say that is anecdotally what I hear people say often. They say, look, I know I need to do this. I know I need to prosecute some of what I believe, but I know the second I do, I'm going to have to leave my church. I'm going to have to put boundaries down in a relationship that's going to be really difficult. I'm going to have to change the way I do A, B, and C. And that is hard. Like, I am absolutely 100% not denying that is difficult and scary and painful. And I think for me, the cost happened. I mean, the cost was there were some relationships that did not survive. There was a job that did not survive that. And there was a community that did not necessarily survive that. And now I can say, because I'm a good bit on the other side of that, those things were restored, not 100% in the same way, but they were restored. And I in great ways, in very, very valuable ways, in very robust ways. But that took a while, and it does not take away from the pain that incurred, I think. But I am 100% sure that honestly asking questions and losing some of that stuff is better than knowing that you need to ask the questions and living inauthentically in that, even when you're living in community and in safety. And like, I know the tension there, and I know that that's hard, but to stay in an authentic place, knowing that when you ask those questions, you're going to have to change. That's a tough place to be. That is where you're going to start having panic attacks and indigestion, and you're going to need to go to the doctor for that. That's a tough place to live. That's a tension-filled place to live.
I am curious, and I don't know if a lot of the conversations we're having already is just a conversation in subtext, but I'm going to ask about the role that politics played into just your awareness of your spirituality, because it is weird. Like when I think about liberal people I know that may be deconstructing, it's like, yeah, purity culture, complementarianism, blah, all that's bad. Republicans that are deconstructing are like, yeah, that stuff's bad, but also like we've got a president, we've got a Republican Party, we've got Christian nationalism, we've got all these other sort of factors. So talk to us about like politics in your life.
Well, I grew up conservative. I grew up in the panhandle of Texas, which I don't know if you're familiar, but it's extremely red. And it's, the buckle on the Bible Belt. And that to me, it was marketed as, this is how Christians vote. We vote for compassionate conservatism. And I believed that. I saw that was that made sense to me. And it wasn't, and even as I went to college and the first time I actually voted and the first couple of times, I was like, yes, this makes sense to me 100%. And then as I got older and I started to read about, like, I started to have more nuanced views and hear me say this. I do not think that just because you grow up and you start reading and you start having more nuanced views, that means you should become more liberal or you should become more progressive or whatever. But for me, what happened was I had been handed, in the same way as religion, but I had been handed a very black and white version of, let's say, abortion. Like, okay, here, we don't kill babies. Okay, yeah, I don't want to kill babies. I don't kill babies. I don't want to kill babies. 100%.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. So yes, I am pro-life. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Well, later, I'm learning more about what that means. And it's like, oh, this is way, way more nuanced than I thought it was. That the I don't kill babies, that does not encompass hardly any of this. So it was a process for me to go, okay, wait, what do I actually believe? And then I started having sex because I got married. And then I was like, I could be pregnant. And then then a whole other world opened up to me. And I was like, whoa, hang on just a second. Now it's actually affecting me. And so it was like it was like a 10-year process of pulling some of this apart. And then I think it was all of that. And then it was 2016, I will never forget where I was when that Access Hollywood tape dropped. I will never forget it because I was on our back deck at our old house, and my husband came through and he was like, "Did you see this?" And I said, "No, what is it?" And he showed me, and I was like, "That's it. We're done. We don't have to listen to this anymore. We're not going to have to deal with him anymore. This will be it. This is it." Because I remembered when I was a child and Bill Clinton, and it was like, "No, we need a president with character." Like, obviously, like, yes. And I was like so excited. And then nobody cared. Like, none of the people that taught me in Sunday school on Facebook, they did not care. In fact, they doubled down. And I was like, whoa, what is happening? And it was like that 24 hours, everything changed for me. And it was so jarring and it was so upsetting. And I remember sitting on the couch with my daughter the night of the 2016 election because she was so excited because, she was like in third grade and she was like, "Is the lady going to be president?" And I was like, "Maybe, I don't know, very exciting." And she fell asleep and I was like, I can't wake her up. I cannot wake her up because I cannot believe this is happening. And then we woke up and it was 81% of white evangelicals voting for him. And I was never the same. I was just never the same. And I could not believe it. I felt betrayed. I felt so disconnected from the people that I sat in the pews with. I could not believe it. And it is still, I still feel so betrayed by it. And it has broken me. I mean, if I can be really honest, it has absolutely broken me.
I really appreciate you just being honest and candid about that, because we have heard similar stories from other people about kind of like their breaking point with the things that Trump does and maybe the GOP more broadly. And I don't say that in a way that celebrates it, because I know there are some people that are so connected to their political identity that to just even wrestle with that is hard because they've been Republicans or conservatives their whole life, and they don't want to get canceled. So it's like they kind of hold and keep all this sort of stuff to themselves. So yeah, I definitely just want to just thank you for that. And that's all I wanted to say. I know Josh had a question.
You're welcome. My mental spiral is an open book for sure.
I totally understand what you're saying. I remember just seeing that he was even running for president. I'm like, this is a joke, right?
Oh,
this
yeah.
is just a joke.
And it was to me until that moment.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
And then and then he's like putting out these videos, and he's like in New Hampshire, New Hampshire, you're not going to have any more drugs. The drugs are going to be gone.
Hey, that's
and
a good impression.
Thank you.
As a theater major, let me say.
I would like show people, I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
This is his position where he's going to get rid of drugs everywhere? And it's like, of course, that didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
And like any of the things he said didn't really happen. Many of them. I should calm down.
Yeah.
But I remember I was just looking at this. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. And
I don't blame, like, I understand conservatism 100%.
I voted for him in 2016.
Yeah.
I did.
Like, I understand conservatism. What we see now is so far away from conservatism. It is so far away from John McCain. It is so far away from, Mitt Romney. It is extremism. It is fascism. It is white Christian nationalism at its core. And I feel for people like you, Josh, people like my parents, people like a lot of people who I grew up with who are like 100% adrift. There is no place for you because you aren't MAGA, you aren't this extreme, but you still hold to conservative values. And that is a tough place to be in right now because there is no spot.
Yeah, I definitely have felt that way as a political, pilgrim. And that's not the right word, but I don't have a home team. Like I have nobody. And
you got me, Josh.
A refuge. No, refugee. Yeah. Yes. No, I'm not saying the right thing. Yes, I do have you, and I do appreciate it. That's not true. I don't have anybody, but I'm just talking about in terms of those broad political movements. But so, all right. This is we're getting up to time, so this is one of the last questions. But I just think it's fascinating that you chose Judas as a.
I love Judas.
Now, I will say that I have thought, I have gotten to the place where I'm much more compassionate on Judas.
Yeah.
And I kind of am like, man, he was probably pretty disappointed.
Man.
And I'm not saying he's a great dude. He was stealing money from the coffers and stuff like that. And who knows why he's doing it, but he was stealing money and all that. But I wonder if part of that was that he's like, wait, I thought Jesus was he made all these promises and now he's going to go die and he's going to go do all this stuff. I thought I was going to be in power. And I see myself in Judas quite a bit when I think about the expectations I had that didn't get met by God.
Right.
Or by Jesus or whatever it is.
Yeah, you did.
And Judas was the enemy, right? He's the guy in the play. When you go to Easter play, he's like horrible.
He looks all dirty and evil.
Yeah, he's like horrible and evil. and you, Judas, and everyone just boos him, off the stage. And yet we're all kind of Judas. So could you just talk a little bit about why did you choose Judas to walk alongside? You talk about in your book. What was it about Judas that compels you to work with him as an imaginary? He's not mad, but partner in this, and as opposed to like Paul or Peter or, Philip or one of those other guys that no one boos.
Well, I think it's what you just said.
Necessarily.
I mean, it's what you just said. Like, it's so easy. Meredith Ann Miller, who is one of my favorite writers, she talks a lot about like kids and like handing them a faith that they don't have to heal from, which is fabulous. She's an excellent follow, but she talks a lot about how it's so easy for us to cast ourselves in scripture as the hero. And that's something that, I was listening to, this was forever ago. It was a Liturgist podcast episode, and Propaganda was one of the guests. And he was talking about how, when white people read the Exodus narrative, they often cast themselves as the Hebrew slaves. Like, oh, that's us. We're being freed. And he's like, no. You guys are the oppressor. Like, you guys need to start reading it as the oppressor. Like, you're in the wrong spot. Like, you've cast yourself in the wrong role. And that changed so much for me. And I have always thought about that. And I think about that when Meredith says that we often cast ourselves as the hero. It's easy for me to pick my favorite disciple, to take like a BuzzFeed quiz and like, which disciple are you? I'm Peter. I'm so crazy. Like, I chopped a guy's ear off. Wow, I'm a nut. No, I am Judas every time. Like, I am so impatient. I am so greedy. I am so, I have such a complex needing, like, I need to be seen. I need to be understood. I want things that God does not want. And I want my purposes to be fulfilled. And I think I see myself, just like you said, I see myself so much in Judas, in just that desire of, and Judas was forced into a deconstruction. He thought, oh my gosh, like, exactly what you said, like, Jesus is going to come in. We're going to take these Romans down. I'm so excited. And, we're going to be free. And I'm up here. Look at me. I got the money. I'm in the inner circle. And Jesus was like, hey, my guy, we're not doing that. Actually, stop being mad about this oil. This is like, yeah, we're going to have the poor forever. So you need to chill on this. And Judas is like, no, wait. No, this is about power. This is about taking people down and you getting lifted up and us being a part of that. And Jesus is like, no, incorrect, my friend. And he, like, that was a loving position. And I think Judas loved Jesus and wanted, like, he was ready, but he missed it. He missed it so much. And, you look at Peter and Judas did the same thing. They both betrayed Jesus. Same thing, exact same thing. The only difference is how they responded to it at the end. I'm convinced that if Judas had hung around just a little bit longer, Jesus and Judas would have had the exact same conversation that Peter and Jesus had at the resurrection, and everything would have been chill. But he couldn't handle it. He was racked with too much guilt. And so I think there is so much of Judas in me. I love focusing on him, because I still just think it was a completely normal human thing for him to want. And I just wish he had held on a little bit longer,
That's really awesome. I've got one more question for you, but before I do, where can people get a hold of your book and learn more about what it is you're doing?
Yeah, so you can get I've Got Questions anywhere you buy fine reading materials. If you can, go to your local indie bookstore and ask for it there, or bookshop.org. Don't, support the oligarchy. But if you have to, it's okay.
The Elon Garky.
And then I am on Instagram at Erin H. Moon, and I write on Substack at erinhmoon.substack.com. So come hang out with us. We're a lot of fun.
Super, super awesome. Okay. Yeah. Last question. If you were to get a piece of fan mail from somebody that read your book, and they wrote to you about the ways in which their book or your book affected them, like, what would you want that letter to say?
I actually got it the other day. This was so cool.
Do tell.
Okay, so I got this email from this 70-year-old woman. Oh, okay, it was a 70-year-old woman, and she was writing on behalf of her and her husband. And she was like, "Hey, our granddaughter was reading your book on vacation, and she was talking to us about it, and we were like just kind of talking about it, and we picked it up because we don't understand what she's going through. Like, she's going through this crisis of faith. We are very like, we're like, deconstruction, that sounds evil. Like, our pastor said that's evil, and we're like worried about her, right? And so after vacation, we asked if, we could read it. We took it, and it like, number one, we understand what she's going through now. And also, like, it has helped us. Like, we are kind of now asking our own questions, and we are kind of working through some stuff. And I was like, okay, this is the business. Like, I love this. This is so great, because that's what I want. It has been so fun. And like, I mean, I say fun, but I've heard a lot of really heart-wrenching stories about genuine religious trauma, church trauma, painful stories. But it has also been really cool to see how it has been a friend to people and been able to walk alongside people who are going through something like that and helped kind of midwife them out of it, to more community, or, a faith that they did not know that they were going to be able to go back to. So that is what I really love to see, has been a really cool byproduct of this. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And what an amazing story to end on. Well, thanks again for stopping by, Erin. This was a phenomenal conversation.
I enjoyed it so much. Thank y'all so much for such great questions.
Yeah, I love your energy, love what you're doing, love the book. Definitely recommend people go out and buy it, help your local bookstore, and all of that fun stuff. And make sure you like and subscribe too, if you're watching this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it really helps us out if you want to get this message out, and especially if you want to.
Podcast. Sorry, you have a podcast too, right?
Yes, I should have said that. God, I'm such an idiot. Yes, yes, please. We have the podcast, Faith Adjacent. Yes, we do not take ourselves very seriously. We take the faith aspect seriously, but we are very silly and slightly heretical. So if that's your vibe,
we are too, actually. I mean, what's really interesting is, like, I get a lot of I don't get as much slack as Josh does, because I'm the liberal. I'm a Democrat. Yes. I'm a believer.
You're already godless. You're a godless liberal.
when I led worship for a time in my early days, I had people in congregation say I couldn't lead worship because I like to wear hats, which is true. I do like to wear hats. So, and for me, early in my Christian days, I'm like, I guess that's true. Like, I haven't read the whole Bible yet. So
maybe it's in there.
Maybe there's like a, secret catchphrase or something, but anyways, yeah. Thank you again for everything. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. And remember, keep your conversations not right or left, but up. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Hey there, Josh Bertram here, faithful host of the Faithful Politics Podcast. I want to let you know about a compelling new spinoff, the Faith Roundtable, where I'll be interviewing top faith leaders, theologians, and scholars to unpack the pressing issues that are shaping the church in America today. We'll dive into topics like faith in public life, social justice, and how we can engage our communities more effectively. Make sure you don't miss any of our enlightening conversations by subscribing to it on our YouTube channel. Join me at the Faith Roundtable, where deep discussion meets thoughtful insight.